Aloha, welcome to the Mr.G podcast. Today is Friday, February 16th, 2024. Happy birthday, Lisa. Happy birthday, Rebecca. Two women I previously dated that had that birthday. Today, we're going to be talking about the generations, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, the greatest generation, the silent generation, all the generations. We're going to clarify them. I did a Generations episode in season one of the Mr.G Hawaii podcast. And a lot of the comments, there was arguments. I was born in 1985, but I'm a millennial. I was born in 1980, but I'm a Gen Z. All these different things. So we're going to clarify that. And I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. I'm coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii, on the outskirts of Chinatown, where it was a nippy 64 degrees today at 4 a.m. when I was feeding the street cats. I gave them extra sardines, extra pate, because the kitties get extra hungry when the weather gets cold. I'm grateful to live somewhere in Hawaii. I'm not a fan of cold weather, but it's nice to break out the hoodies and uh, experience 60s every once in a while. It rarely gets into the 60s in Hawaii. I'm also watching my security cameras because I'm expecting a delivery of ice cream, drumsticks. All right, a list of social generations. We're going to go through each generation, and I'm going to tell you somebody that I knew from each generation. I've never known anybody from the lost generation, or the silent generation. The silent generation comes after the greatest generation. We always hear about the greatest generation. That's the generation that lived through the Great Depression and World War II. You hear about the baby boomers. The baby boomers are the generation that precedes Gen X. After Gen X came millennials. After the millennials came Gen Z. And on yesterday, the last episode, on the Valentine's episode of the Mr.G Hawaii podcast, I talked about Gen Z and how Gen Z males in particular are having problems with dating. Don't hate the messenger. Don't kill the messenger. Everything that I was talking about basically comes from Jordan Peterson and his explanation for it, why young men at dating age right now, Gen Z is in high school and college age, why they're not having success with women. And a number of factors have to do with it. But that's one reason why I wanted to emphasize the different generations. I'm not hating on any particular generation. I'm just stating the facts and the information that is brought out to the world. And this is including the Western world. Other countries have different uh, groupings of generations. For instance, if you're in a Cold War, previous Soviet Union country, then they count the new generation as the ones born, after their country became sovereign from the Soviet Union. So this is a list of social generations as far as the Western world. All right, so like I said, the oldest one we'll do is the lost generation, and that's from 1883 to 1900. The lost generation, that term, I believe, is coined by a French writer, a female writer that was friends with Ernest Hemingway. Her name was like Gertrude Stein, possibly. And she came up with that term. We'll go more into it into detail in this podcast. After the lost generation from 1883 to 1900, we have the greatest generation, and that's from 1901 to 1927. After the greatest generation, we have the silent generation, 1928 to 1945. So the silent generation, there are still members of Congress and in the Senate that are from the silent generation. And those are people born up until 1945. After 45, from 1946 to 1964, we have the longest age bracket, 18 years. And those are the baby boomers. And the baby boomers are known to be one of the largest generations. Just recently, millennials reached enough baby boomers passed on, basically. And so now there are the same number of millennials in the United States as there are baby boomers. The baby boomers used to be the dominant number of people in a particular group. That's because people had less children during World War II. People had less children before World War II because of the Great Depression. And after World War II, in the United States in particular, that's when people started having a lot of children, hence the baby boom. So after the baby boomers, we have Gen X. Now, right now, as far as social media and Twitter and just like the vibe, Gen X is like the dominant generation as far as they talk the most smack. They're like, we're Gen X. We were left to our own devices from sun up till sundown. All we had was a bike and a hose. If we didn't have that water hose, we would have died of thirst. Our parents had no idea where we were. We used to ride on top of railroad cars. We used to push shopping carts into the middle of the highway. We used to light fireworks off into the grocery store. Oh, that was actually just me, not all Gen X. I barely made Gen X. I was born at the very end of 1979, and Gen X officially is from 1965 to 1980. So the oldest members of Gen X were born in 65. The youngest members were born in 1980. I was just about born in 1980. So my older sister's 4 years older. They're total Gen X, like totally immersed into Gen X. Me, I got to see both all different sides of the spectrum, and I think I'm a great person to talk about the generations because I have a great insight into it. Like I said, I was born in 1979, so officially I'm Gen X. My older sisters were more into the Gen X culture because they were 4 years older, and definitely Gen X. They sometimes have a separate category for people like me that are in between Gen X and millennial, and they call them a Zennial with a X at the start, XENNIALL, AL, Zennial. And that's because they have aspects of both cultures. And personally, I didn't graduate from the University of Texas, Hook'em Horns, until 2010. Everybody that I went to school with was millennial. I was a Gen X, but I was masquerading as a millennial. One time, a college professor asked a small class, about 30, 40 people, he's like, I'm pretty sure everybody in here is a millennial. We don't have any Gen X's. And he's like kind of looking at me, and I'm like, yeah, millennial. Yeah. I don't even remember September 11th. Huh? Yeah, I was a little kid. I'm a millennial. But yeah, so millennials are classified between 1981 and 1996. So right now, the youngest millennials in the United States are in their late 20s, 29 or 30. They were born in 96, so we're in 2024, so it's almost 30 years ago. The the youngest millennials. So if you look at college age people, as far as the University of Texas and most public universities, it's like 90% of all the students, all the undergraduates are under the age of 25. So basically, I can assume that 90% of all undergraduates in the United States are Gen Z. Gen Alpha, they are too young to go to college. Gen Alpha is defined as early 2010s to mid 2020s. So anybody born, 2013 and after. So if you have young children, or if you plan on having young children, they would be considered Gen Alpha. And they have a lot of expectations on themselves, considered what previous generations had. All right, we're going to go into more details about the different generations. My name is Gregory Brandt. The Mr.G podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and watch episodes in their entirety at twitter.com/Gregory Brandt, BRNDT. Follow my 5 YouTube channels too. This is part 1. We'll be back for part 2.